Welcome to Blue Collar Startup, the podcast where hard work meets big ideas. This is your home for real talk, real stories, and real strategies from the front lines of life and the business of the trades. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Nelson from Five Towers Media.
And I'm your co-host, Derek Foster of Daigle Cleaning Systems.
Yeah, you are. It's like my favorite thing to say whenever you say that. I don't know
I
why.
know. It's funny.
It just makes me laugh. Every like, yeah, you are.
Well, it's good to see that you're up and around.
Oh, I know. I know. Greg and I were talking about before we started the show, man. I mean, all told, Derek, that was like 10 days of just feeling like absolute garbage. And 4 or 5 of those days, I
Oh,
was down, like down for the count, man. That's the sickest I've been. I want to say since like I had COVID back in 2020. I mean, it was pretty bad.
yeah, it's almost just as difficult mentally when you're down and out like that to be able to manage the sickness and then try to keep up with what's going on, and it's not easy. So
No, yeah, we're doing a lot of extra work all week trying to get caught back up and get the things I wasn't able to get to during last week. And it's yeah, getting sick as a business owner sucks. It sucks at any realm or any walk of
no
life. Yeah.
doubt.
Business owner, man, that stuff just doesn't go away.
No, it does not.
Does not go away. So where are we at? I'm a little rusty. I took 1 week off and all of a sudden I don't know what I'm doing next. So we
No, we're
probably
uh we're back here in our Ask the Expert segment of the show.
yes.
So I
Yes.
think, we probably should touch on some of the new segments that we have, Mike, and roll through that just so any new listeners know
Yeah. Yeah.
offer.
I was really sad to miss. So we had our Catamount Roundtable, which is one of the new formats that we're doing last week. You got to sit down with Stacy and Scott, and I think Jason was with you guys too, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
Jason joined it too. It's
yeah,
great.
so I'm looking forward to listening to that episode on personal and professional development. We've also got our Let's Ask Bill episodes, the Lab, LAB, and I think we've got another one of those coming up next week or the week after.
Yeah.
And let's see, later on this month, we've got one of our new segments, Women in the Trades, with Stacy Spector of Catamount Consulting as a guest host. Very excited about that. And then, of course, the Ask the Experts, like we're doing today with Greg, and then interviews from the field where we're talking with the blue collar business owners and trades workers that are out there and kind of hearing about what they're doing and getting it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So excited about all these new formats and seeing where they can take the show to. Also, of course, don't forget everybody, we've got our Patreon side of the business here, the business of the podcast. For if you don't know what that is, Patreon is a membership portal that you can utilize. And so we've set up an account. We're adding very specific content. There's actually a section of each episode that we're putting in there that is not available to just the general public. So if you're looking for some more content from us, that is the place to go. The A lot of the stuff that we're doing on the Patreon side of things is trying to be really actionable for business owners, trying to get them more insight as far as structuring their business, growing their business, sales, marketing, and or like today with Greg talking about the legal side of how to protect your business and what to do when situations arise. So really excited about the stuff that we're putting out on Patreon. So please, join. It's a whopping $5 a month. Not big money. Well worth the content that we're giving you guys in there. So help support the show. Speaking of supporting the show, of course, sponsorship opportunities are available. If you don't know, we bring on a few sponsors every year. The money is used to partly to offset the cost of the show, but also to support tools and tuition for kids that are coming through trade school, whether it's BOCES programs, HVCC, that we affectionately call the blue collar college because of all the amazing trades programs they have down there. So, we've got a lot of sponsorship opportunities available. Please reach out to us if you're interested and you want to see your name in lights, so to speak, on the blue collar architecture that we've got built out here. Some of our current sponsors, we've got the folks over at Peopleese, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Michaels Group, Catamount Consulting, of course, Pam and Doug over at the Northeast Construction Trades Workforce Coalition doing amazing work. And of course, Derek's team over at Daigle Cleaning Systems, our team over at Five Towers Media. Without those people, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of the great things that we've been doing, whether it's making business connections, helping out kids in the trades, and really just trying to get more word out there about how important the trades are to this country and everything that goes on a day-to-day basis. So thanks to everybody for your support. And let's get to our guests. Greg Spaun. Greg, how we doing, man?
Doing well. How about you? I'm glad you're on the mend. I'm glad you're feeling better. And yeah, there's nothing worse than, if you have business stresses because the emails are coming in,
Oh,
and at a certain point you've got to disconnect for your mental and even physical health, even though you know what kind of an avalanche you're going to come back into once you start reviewing those emails. But you got
you
to
know
do it.
what's you know what's wild about being that sick is it's actually when I'm that sick, it's actually the only time that I just don't care. Like, you're so sick, you can't eat like the stress of day-to-day operations melts away because you feel so awful physically with whatever you're fighting at that point in time. So I'm just like, the house could be burning down right now, and I don't even care. If it'll make my head stop hurting or it'll bring my flu temperature down, that'd be great. But terrible.
I always get a greater appreciation for being healthy after going through that. Stop taking it for granted, So
Yeah, man.
it's not easy.
Not easy. It's not easy. Heavy as the head, as they say. So, Greg, why don't we start off just kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your firm, what you do, who you are, that kind of stuff.
Okay, my name is Gregory Spaun. I'm with the law firm of Welby, Brady, and Greenblatt. We're construction lawyers, is what we are. My firm does not have a family law guy down the hall. There's no criminal practitioner here. We don't have, somebody who focuses in, intellectual property or anything like that. It's all focused around construction and related areas. Again, commercial and real estate as well, but they're all an outgrowth out of construction. Our firm started, over 30 years ago when Tom Welby and Jerry Brady, both who were professional engineers by training, decided to go to law school. They met up and decided, hey, let's we can make a niche business by doing construction law. And it was right around that time when real specializations, the old hanging out a general practitioner's shingle, was on the down, was waning, and you know you started to see more niche practitioners. This way, I say, I'm barred by rules of professional responsibility from using the term specialist, but I say that we concentrate our practice in construction, and we're really good at it. So, that's what we do. We help, anybody dealing with construction, except the guy falling off the scaffold. We leave those to the personal injury practitioners, and we'll represent, typically, if it's that context, it's an insurance dispute, and we'll represent somebody in defending that lawsuit in the meantime. But by and large, it's a lot of helping people find their wallet, to speak in the vernacular. People
Yeah.
not paying, delay the pay, something going wrong on a job, somebody's out of pocket, and we help contractors navigate that mess.
It's surprising how much that actually goes on, right?
Yeah.
Like the no pay, late pay stuff is just wild in the business community.
Yeah, some people they get in a little above their heads, and next thing the job that they bid out, they missed a couple of things in the plans, and next thing you know, it's on them. They're having to come out of pocket. Maybe their lines of credit are a little extended, or some people just use it as a some kind of an impromptu loan. Hey, look, if I push out the payment terms from 30 days to 60 days, hey, now I've got another month of float to be able to operate my business, knowing that they'll eventually flow money down, but now you have to have a fight over it.
Yeah, yeah. It's, and I know we're going to get into it here a little later on the show as far as like protecting yourself and contracts and how the work up front really kind of saves you time in the end, I guess is the way to say it. But
No
I'm curious,
doubt.
Greg, how did you get into the construction side of things, you personally?
Well, I've been practicing construction law for 17 years. I've been admitted to practice for 25 years. Brooklyn Law School, class of 2000, class of zero, make of that what you will. But yeah, I did my first couple of years working in the court system as for the appellate division, second department in Brooklyn, and then got into general practice. And then right ironically enough, in 2009, as the economy was really starting to go downhill, um, I was working at a firm where they had political connections, and those political connections didn't look very well, which ultimately panned out. The partner's so-called rabbi at that firm was about to lose an election, and he did. So I spotted an ad in the law journal at the appropriate time, sent my resume over. I was a ninth year associate at the time, although they were looking for a second to third and a fifth to sixth. So they did bring in those two type of associates, and then they made room for a senior associate, me, and I've been here ever since.
Very nice. It's it's staggering how what's the word? I don't want to say complicated, although I'm sure it is, but like the amount of different types of things you have to worry about in the trades, legally speaking, just seems to be staggering to me. What when you're working with your clients, and well, actually, we should ask that, right? Like, what are the some of the kinds of clients that you're working with? Let's do that first.
Well, typically, as it just happens to shake out, there are firms. We're what's called a boutique firm. We concentrate our practice in one area. Um, but because of that, as it turns out, there are firms that typically represent more general contractors than not. I'm not saying a firm like that won't represent a sub, but you have to consider that there are conflicts of interest. If you're representing a general contractor, you can't represent that GC against a subcontractor on the job who's also your client.
Mhm.
So if you're representing a general contractor who routinely has a cadre of 30, 40, or 50 subs, those are potential clients you can't touch because more often than not, they'll have claims against your client, and you're barred from taking those contractors. So our firm happens to have, our bread and butter are, you know, small to mid-tier subcontractors. We have some larger subcontractors and some general contractors on our client roll as well, but over half are subcontractors of some variety. Um, the remainder are general contractors, owners, architects, engineers, design professionals, insurance companies, and sureties. But again, just in order to minimize the amount of conflicts, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I mean, it happens pretty frequently when you practice in one area, but
Mhm.
by not representing multiple, not concentrating on multiple tiers, um, that enables us to avoid those kind of conflicts because after a while, a client will understand every once in a while, hey, you also represent the guy I want to sue, so you got to back out of both. You can't, oh, he's the older client, I'm going to represent him or her. No, you got to play Switzerland and be neutral. The most you can do is give each of them numbers to attorneys that, you hope won't poach the client for themselves down the line. Not that that doesn't happen, but again, a small practice area, what goes around comes around. So, you try to avoid that and you stay in your areas. And again, most of our clients are subcontractors, but we have experience up and down the food chain.
Yeah. When you say small to mid-sized tier clients, what does that equate to, like revenue wise? I guess is probably typically how they look at that, right?
Yes and no. I mean, it's more, the types of jobs. I mean, that there's large revenue subcontractors that, take hundreds of small jobs versus, smaller subcontractors that have four or five large jobs going at once.
Yeah.
So you would think it would be split up by revenue, but it really doesn't. It's more job value, and some jobs, I've represented. People on, contractors on jobs, eight, nine figures. Um, again, we're not dealing with, the big name international contractors. Again, they've
Mhm.
got their own niche. Most of those have in-house counsel, if not outright law departments in-house.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, occasionally we will be local counsel to organizations like that. I've got one of those going right now. They're a national. They have a case that where the venue is in New York, even though the job's out in the Southeast. So, again, we go where our clients go, and
Yeah.
they come to us when they need to.
It's really kind of fascinating to think about the need for professional legal help inside the trades, given that like you were saying, like with the larger guys, they might have in-house counsel, which means there's things happening all the time where they need to have
Mhm.
lawyers available, right? And but even if you don't have in-house counsel, even smaller companies still there's still just such a demand for it all the time. And I always, for especially for the younger businesses, which is always like the sweet spot for me when I'm talking about people because that's who I
Mhm.
am as a small business owner.
Yep.
I always just think about like, man, I couldn't imagine there's probably so many things I'm not even aware of that I need legal eyeballs on or discussions
Mhm.
being had, and I'm not having those discussions because I'm just ignorant of it altogether. And that was one of the hopes in bringing you on today was to talk about some of those things to help identify to small and mid-sized businesses like chances are if you're not talking to a lawyer pretty regularly you might want to.
Yeah,
Right.
the
Is
days of
that, is
the
that fair?
handshake deal are over.
Yeah.
And again, we there was something to that where, a person's handshake was their word, was their bond. And ultimately, if there was a dispute, you know, people could just settle it in a back room and figure out, who's gonna take the brunt of it. Are they gonna split the headache, and split the pain? Now,
Hmm.
as people have, as trust has waned, people say, oh, the lawyers screwed things up. I don't think that that's the case. I think that, we're more the symptom of the issue, of the larger issue, which is you know, that the level of trust in people has gone down. So as a fallback, okay, I want my paperwork and my documentation in order. This way, while I hope to resolve it early, if there's a problem, or I hope to prevent it in the first place, which is ideal, um, if you have to go to war, you're prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before we started the show, right? Where making sure that you understand everything that's in your contract and not
Hmm.
necessarily like Derek was saying, like not necessarily just signing a boilerplate contract because you want the deal. Like there's things
Yeah.
in there that you need to take a look at and you possibly need to say no to. Can you kind of speak on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I had a case involving a client, a big, I have multiple my firm has multiple offices in New York. We have a downstate office in White Plains and a capital region office in Albany. As for me, I split my time between the two. This was a case out of my White Plains office where, a large downstate electrical contractor, works Long Island, New York City, and the lower Hudson Valley. He's been in the business a while. He's one of the last people who can tell me that he was doing this while I was still in diapers. Um, he signed a contract ostensibly in AIA form, but it was heavily modified. And the good thing about if you're using a legitimate AIA form is it marks changes in the document with a line on the left side of the paper. And there were pages and pages where this line was. And basically, the general contractor inserted what's called a turnkey provision that provided, okay, here are the plans. These plans include not only what's depicted here, but anything envisioned by the design intent, required by codes, or required to make this was an assisted living facility, to make it functional as the project as envisioned. So now my electrical contractor has to, look into the crystal ball. Okay, what was envisioned? It's not on the plans. And he tweaked the payment terms, he tweaked some of the insurance so that he could, use his current policy and not have to procure others. Other terms he didn't even look at, and ultimately he had about $800,000 in change orders. Um,
Wow.
and there were change orders that were being paid on the job by one project manager. He leaves, a new PM comes in and says, "Hey, there's a turnkey provision. Change order? What's that? No such animal," and denied everything.
Oh,
And based on the contract language, it was, you know, my client was pretty stuck. But that being said, I was able to craft an argument because there were change orders that were paid. Hey, course of conduct. There were change orders on this job. My client had a reasonable right to expect payment of change orders, and we settled. literally the day before jury selection for about two-thirds of what my client was owed. After that and after the legal fees incurred in getting that far, simply by taking the turnkey provision out or negotiating it to something much more favorable would have, resolved the problem in the first place. So,
Sound- Sounds like a lot of time, money, and resources could have been saved had there been some representation on the front end of that.
yes, absolutely. I mean, look, I'm Gen X. I grew up with Bugs Bunny and Woody Woodpecker, and there's this famous Woody Woodpecker episode where Woody's going through and dealing with problem after problem, and then there's a character. If Woody had gone straight to the police, none of this would have ever happened. And by the end of the cartoon, Woody turns around, slaps him in the face, shut up. But at the end of the day, hey, if Woody had gone straight to the police, none of this would have ever happened. Same
Yeah.
thing. If you reviewed your contract in the first place, none of this would have ever happened.
Is that a lot of the kind of work that you guys are doing is specifically on the contract side of things to make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and your clients are protected?
No, most of my practice is litigation. It's when everything has gone sideways and, the train's off the rails, there's a smoldering uh, uh, pyre down the track. That's usually when we get brought in. So that being said, I try to be proactive. Look, my elevator pitch is it's easier for me and cheaper for you for me to keep you out of trouble than to go getting you out of trouble. But
Yeah.
that being said, contractors, God bless them, they're an optimistic bunch. Nothing's going to go wrong. I know the guy, I know the job, I know what I'm doing. So they're not they're not as confrontational. That's probably a wrong word, but they don't push as much as they should in the negotiation phase,
Yeah.
and that's a big problem. So as a result, as much as we try to get contracts in on the front end and contract review, and I've got some clients that are great. They'll send me a contract for a small job, and look, nobody wants to spend thousand or 2,000 or however many thousands of dollars reviewing a contract on a small job. But that small job, if somebody gets hurt and you don't have the proper insurance and indemnification provisions, now you could be looking at a 6 or 7 figure claim on a 5 figure job. And you need the contract and you need to make sure everything's in place so your insurance carrier can't get cute later on and disclaim because your contract didn't contain all of the necessary requirements to flow down the liabilities and the risks.
Do you see those kinds of issues more with like larger jobs than say like a $400,000 home build versus like a $15 million commercial property? Or is it do you see these same kind of issues on all sorts of all size jobs?
I see the issue on all size jobs because every general contractor has their own form. And, at the end of the day, there's only so much that they're going to tolerate. It's like, again, the old Gen X cartoon Popeye. I've had all I can stands and I can't stands no more. You mark up a general contract to the point where it looks, all of the red lines look like somebody bled all over the paper. The general contractor is going to take a pass on the job. My job isn't to convince my client how bad the contract is and that they shouldn't take the job. They're in the business to take risk. Risk is a lot of people's business. My job is to make sure my client knows the amount of risk they can take and they have an idea, okay, I'm facing these risks with these provisions in. I want to negotiate these more onerous provisions out. And if I can't get it done, I can't get it done. But on the other hand, I'm willing to go forward with a certain amount of risk. It's my job to make sure my client knows what those levels of risk are.
That's interesting. I hadn't actually thought about it.
Is there a certain way, Greg? Because that's an interesting, in me being in that position, you want to win the work and win the job.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you're having the conversation with the potential customer about, okay, well, we want the job, but here's X, Y, and Z. Is there a particular way that a business owner can approach that conversation in that negotiation period that puts them in a position to negotiate it in a manner that's not going to lose them the project?
Well, and at the risk of the shameless plug, which is why I'm here, have your lawyer, highlight which, set up a contract for negotiation with bargaining chips. A lot of times the contracts will include provisions that won't pass legal muster. I love seeing those, and I'll tell my client, hey, you want to strike this pay if paid clause. Pay if paid is clauses have been illegal in a state for 30 years, thanks to my partner Mike Greenblatt, who argued that case before the Court of Appeals. But they're still in contracts. Okay, you want to strike it, but you want to negotiate this back in exchange for something you really want, because the court will never enforce that, and you're giving somebody ice in the winter. You want to know where your bargaining chips are and where your lines of retreat are. You know, I'll mark up a contract, and say, look, there are certain things you cannot bargain on. Either this goes or my recommendation, and it's just that, a recommendation to not take the job. Um, some clients say, I do what my lawyer tells me. It's not my business to run. It's your business to run. It's, it's my job to be your tool, not vice versa. I suggest what you might or might not want to do, but ultimately it's a business decision. I'm just informing that from a legal perspective as to, how you want to best preserve your business rights in a legal context in order to make sure at the end of the day that you have something to negotiate and something to actually wheel and deal with.
You elaborate on that pay as paid clause that you
Well, a
mentioned?
pay if paid clause is something that's, and people confuse these. There are two versions. There's pay if paid, which says subcontractor, I don't have the obligation to pay you unless I get paid from the owner. And if I never get paid from the owner, I don't ever have to pay you. Those are illegal. Pay when paid says, hey, subcontractor, I will pay you when I get paid from the owner or within a reasonable time if the owner's not paying. That's merely a timing mechanism. The question of what's reasonable delay, that can be argued back and forth. But ultimately, you still maintain your right to payment, even if the owner never pays the GC.
Interesting. I didn't even know either one of those things were a thing. I pay if paid is actually still legal in other states. It's just not legal in New York State, or is it
Correct.
illegal all over the
No, there's a
country?
variety as to where it's legal and where it's not. For instance, in Connecticut, it's legal. New Jersey, in theory, it's legal, but as the courts interpret the clause, you have to be very specific as to the language. And it's a practical matter. The New Jersey courts haven't seen language they've blessed yet. But in New York, illegal. Okay. I
Okay,
think we
sorry,
may
my
have.
internet was getting a little shabby there for a minute.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
was going
you're
to
good
say
now.
I saw a little bit of a glitching problem.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that, Greg, is we see that, and I've
Yeah, I
seen that.
don't.
Yep. We
So
got
you see pay if paid clauses, Derek?
occasionally, there's some version of that, and it was just interesting that you brought that up because it's
Yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, typically a New York-based contractor, um, you know, some of them still do have those clauses in their contract, and that's because, I'm GC, you're subcontractor. I want you to know where you stand. Okay. Again, if I'm representing a subcontractor, I'm happy to see that clause because, the GC just cut their legs out from under them. What you see more is when you're building, national chain stores. And
yeah.
of course, national customer comes in. Um, for example, a Target, they've got their cadre of contractors and subcontractors they use, but sometimes, particularly more for licensed trades, they have to dive into the local labor pool and they'll retain some local subcontractors. And these contracts contain, oh, you won't file a mechanics lien on the job. Yeah, no good in New York. Oh, if you're going to sue me, you're going to be suing me in Louisiana. No good in New York. If you're going to be suing me, it's going to be determinable under Louisiana law. No good in New York. Oh, pay if paid. No good in New York. There's a whole host of them that you'll see in these contracts. And again, I'll give my client an email that says this email is attorney-client privilege for your eyes only because this is negotiation strategy. And if you just forward it, you just dropped your pants. That being said, the attached contract with the markups send over. And basically, one is the index to the other.
Hmm.
Got it. So with these laws, I'm sure
How
they
do
change
business
all the time.
owners?
Oh, sorry, Mike. I don't know if you cut
Go
out
ahead,
or
D.
No, I was going to say with all of
No, no, no. I
these,
stopped.
with all these clauses and whatnot that are illegal, and they're I would imagine they change from time to time or some get added.
Oh, they
How
do.
how could a business owner keep up with those simply?
It's not easy. Every December, I get a pit in my stomach. It's like, okay, what's the legislature going to? I have an idea of what the legislature's done, but what's the governor going to sign and what's the governor going to not sign that will further impact the business community generally and the construction industry in particular. And unfortunately for the industry, she was a little busy this year. There are new prevailing wage requirements on off-site fabrication that's going to be you know, quite a quite a conundrum for contractors to comply with. I mean, for instance, if you're familiar with the term prevailing wage, you know that it requires certain wages paid on certain jobs, which is hard enough sometimes to compute in U.S. dollars. But how do you compute it in yen if you're buying Mitsubishi equipment that's manufactured for a job in upstate New York, or or rupees, or well, we can't trade with Russia, so rubles are off the table, but euros or any other Chinese yuan, how do you compute prevailing wage there? Or, you have a fabrication shop, you use a fabricator in Pennsylvania. Yeah, they get a lot of business from New York, but now do they want the headaches of, being a New York prevailing wage contractor? And the answer is going to be likely not. So yeah, it's very hard. And for those, I would suggest joining industry associations. Um, you have national associations like Associated General Contractors. You have ABC, Associated Builders and Contractors. You have American Subcontractors Association. You also have local chapters, AGC of New York. You know. Northeastern Subcontractors, New York City Subcontractors Trade Association. You have these associations who, basically that's one of the benefits of membership. And, some associations are better than others, but they do communicate to their members as to, what's new, what you should look out for, and how we as an industry can tackle these issues.
It's so staggering. There's just so much.
It is. It's
Um,
not easy, but on the other hand, if you don't keep up, you're likely to get, you know, proverbially whacked in the back of the head with a baseball bat out of nowhere because it'll just sneak up on you and bang, it'll get you. That's why
Yeah.
I'm all about being proactive. I remember sitting in my real estate practice class, and my professor, great guy, Steve Barshov, and he told us, he's like, look, you come to me with a problem at the contract stage, I'll charge you a penny. You come to me at the problem stage, I'll charge you $1. You come to me when it's time to try the case, I'll charge you $100. And it's, the old ounce of prevention is worth a pound to cure. Truer words were never spoken.
Yeah. Greg, I know we got to start to transition over to the Patreon side of things, but for our listeners, if there's one thing you're going to tell our listeners about the legal side of the trades, what would it be?
Um, just that doing a good job is not enough anymore. I've had clients over the years, and I still have clients. Hey, if I put my all into the construction, into the project, and I build a good product, then I'm good. Then there won't be any problems. There'll be no basis for objection, no basis for not paying me, and I'll live to build the next project. Um, Unfortunately, that's not true anymore. There are paperwork breaches that, regardless of how good the job is, will get you. There's a case, goes back to 2013, out of an appellate court in Manhattan where the job was conducted perfectly. No complaints by the owner as to the this electrician's scope of work. Everybody was happy with the work. Didn't file certified payrolls um, as required, and ultimately, despite the fact that the owner somehow, and it was never explained in the case, released that payment to the GC, the GC says, "Well, without certified payrolls, I don't have the obligation to pay you, so I'm not paying you." And ultimately, that was the final result. Good work, proper work, everybody happy, no back charges, no payment. Why? Paperwork. So you've got to have that paperwork in order.
Expensive
That's
lesson to
wild.
learn.
It is.
It's happened to me.
Yeah. And there are ways to cut it off at the pass. For instance, if if I have a client who, okay, I've reviewed the contract, now they want me to set up what we call a job book. Okay, it has okay, if there's a delay, go to D. Okay, here's delay. Here are my blank templates as to the notices to send under that contract, tailored to that contract. And if it's a municipal owner, any municipal requirements as well, as far as how to best protect your rights, how to best give notice, and how to best make sure at the end of the day that you can have the fight to recoup your payment. And a lot of clients tell me, hey, look, I don't want to be that nuisance. I don't want to be that pain in the ass who's always papering the job. And I tell them, I'm like, look, remember Salvatore Tessio in The Godfather, played by the late great Abe Vigoda, who, believe it or not, in 1972 was younger than I am now, but God, he looked 30 years older than I am now. I guess something about aging in the 70s, but his last line to Tom Hagen, who when he's like, "Can you help me?" And Tom's like, "No, Sally, I can't. It's done." And he's like, "Well, tell Mikey I always liked him. It was just business." That's the attitude you have to have when you give these notices. It's just business. You can,
Mhm.
have a good professional relationship with the people. You can be friends with the people. You can go see them at the bar. You can mix it at a happy hour at a trade association. But hey, in order to protect your rights, it's just business. Send a notice.
Yeah, you really do have to protect yourself. It's unfortunate,
No
but
doubt.
part of the world we live in.
Yeah.
Uh, Greg,
Unfortunately.
unfortunately, we're gonna jump over to the Patreon side of things here, everybody. But before we do, Greg, you want to just tell people if they have questions, they want to get connected with you, maybe they need some help. How do they find you?
Sure. My firm is Welby, Brady, and Greenblatt. I joke that every time I give a presentation, a webinar, or whatnot, comes with my lifetime guarantee. As long as I'm alive, email me with a question. I'm easy to get. My email is gspaun, GSPAUN, at WBGLLP.com. Or you can just Google Welby, Brady, and Greenblatt, and we pop right on up.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show and looking forward to asking you a few more questions here on the Patreon side of things. And of course, everybody, thanks for listening. Really appreciate your support. You can find us. Our website is bluecollarstartup.io. And then, of course, you can listen to our podcast on Apple and Spotify, or you can watch the video version on YouTube or on Rumble. Search us out, find us, leave us a review, hit the like button, subscribe button, all the things. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
And that wraps up another episode of Blue Collar Startup. A big thank you to our sponsors, Five Towers Media, Daigle Cleaning Systems, Daigle Fire Solutions, The Michaels Group, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Peoplease, and Catamount Consulting for making this podcast possible. And thank you for tuning in. If you learned something or felt inspired, connect with us on our website at bluecollarstartup.io or email us at hardhat.bcsu@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your questions and topic ideas. Help us spread the word by sharing the show and following us on social media for updates. Until next time, keep on building, keep on dreaming, and keep hustling like your future depends on it.